and accelerate. And obviously, this can happen in every county. So we're pretty excited about the big numbers, but we're just getting going.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Oh dear. Did you have more to say?
Nope, that's it. Yep.
Okay, perfect timing. Sorry. All right, Kristen, you're back up.
Cool. One of the amazing things that we are able to do is to actually calculate the savings that happens in homes. So a little story I want to talk about kind of this Oneota Take program that's illustrated here, which is our carbon offset program that pays for a lot of the energy efficiency work that we do in low-income homes, is through this carbon tags program. And so about a year ago, I had the privilege to go out and be part of the Bridge 20 conference. Or was it Bridge 19? Doesn't matter. But it's a green business conference that happened out in the Bay Area. And there's like all of these sustainability executives from various corporations attended. And then Joel and I were there from the Humboldt-Winneshiek Energy District, telling folks about our grassroots approach to clean energy. All that to say, there's sessions every day where they kind of have a Shark Tank-esque, like business entrepreneurs go up and pitch their great sustainability business idea. And so these were really fun to watch, just to kind of see like what's on the cutting edge, like why, all these different ideas. And one of the great business ideas was that someone was going to create a program where you could, after you take a flight, go on and just on the spot purchase your own carbon offsets. And just do it yourself. And I'm like, we're kind of ahead of the game here. Here in Winneshiek County and all of Northeast Iowa, we can purchase these Oneota tags. And so when we do want to pay our own price for carbon, we can go do that. And then that carbon is saved elsewhere through the work that the Energy District does. And so I guess all that to say, it really is an innovative thing that we have here, and that we can be telling our friends and neighbors about, because it supports the energy efficiency work that's done right here in Northeast Iowa. So, yeah.
Thanks, Kristen. Martin?
Great. Yeah, so I guess I'm covering, Decorah municipalization effort, and I think I'm assuming that a good chunk of you are pretty familiar with this effort from, roughly 2 years ago, 2.5 or so. So I'm just going to talk about my experience as a Luther student and getting involved with it. So I think like many people, before I got involved in Decorah Power, I didn't know anything about municipal electric utilities. And I never really thought about energy. I think I took energy for granted, and I never thought about, where my energy was coming from or where those dollars are going. I just turned on a light switch and it was there. So I think a lot of that changed my sophomore year at Luther. I was in a journalism class, and I had a cover beat, or, a topic for the semester. And I stumbled upon Decorah Power from one of my friends at Luther. And so I covered this topic throughout the semester, and I interviewed community members about Decorah Power, and I was constantly learning about municipalization in Decorah. And I became really excited about the prospects of a MEU after reading Decorah Power's feasibility study. And I think like any feasibility study, right, it should be taken with a grain of salt, but at the same time, I think there was really exciting figures, and I thought, overall it was a really strong feasibility study. And for me, there's two big takeaways. I think first, an MEU could create new revenue streams for Decorah, as the excess revenue would be generated back into Decorah. And I think, looking at, creative ways for generating revenue for municipalities is something that we should look forward to for investing in, local projects in the future. And I think an MEU would prioritize renewable energy. And I think that's also really important in the future. I think cities play a really important role in an energy transition, and that was something that made me excited. And so I wanted to help further pursue municipalization. And so I got involved, and I went door to door and made phone calls, but I found those efforts like pretty unsuccessful. So I focused most of my attention, all of it, on Luther's campus and trying to get Luther students out to vote. And I had mixed feelings about that because on the one hand, it was the largest number of Luther students who turned out for a local election in a long time, right? It was just under 150 students, but at the same time, that was just 150 out of roughly 2,000 students. And so I think moving forward, from my experiences, I'm still really optimistic about municipalization, but I think Luther and Luther students play a really important role in Decorah's energy future. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, back to Andy.
Great. Thanks, Martin. Good summary. And I hope folks are thinking of questions for us because we're ready for you to fire them at us. You can do that in the chat, right, Heidi, potentially?
Yep.
Or we can just have some verbal questions towards the end, whatever folks prefer. Policy-wise, of course, we've been pretty active in policy over the years. We didn't really anticipate at the very beginning that we would do that. We thought we were going to put boots on the ground and work locally, but we realized that so much of what we do does depend on policy, especially state policy. And so a couple of big areas where we have been involved over the years extensively, and many of you know this, have been involved in these issues also, include net metering for solar owners, been ongoing for many, many years and is still ongoing. But we've seen really great success actually compared to many states around the country where net metering has gone away already, because the investor-owned utilities often aren't real fans of that policy. But in Iowa, in a red state, we still have pretty strong net metering. And the most recent development there was legislative action early this year in the 2020 legislative session, where the legislature passed a bill that codifies net metering for Iowans for at least another 5 to 7 years, it looks like. So that's really great news. It's not over, it never is, because when a bill is written, then the utilities need to respond essentially and develop tariffs, actual utility tariffs for their customers that conform to those laws. So we're in the process of keeping an eye on that. We think those tariffs will be pretty good net metering tariffs still, but there's a few issues that we're really watching hard and working on. We've been submitting testimony at the Utilities Board multiple rounds now since July. And then another issue, of course, among many that we've been involved in at the Utility Board includes rate cases. So we've been through 2 rounds of Alliant Energy rate cases. Our focus there generally is to both reduce the energy burden, the costs on lower income households, but also on struggling businesses, which many small businesses have very high energy costs based on their business. And then also protect the rights of customers and communities to invest in both solar and in energy efficiency. So we work to protect those energy efficiency programs, strengthen them when possible. So those are just a few of the main policy areas we've been involved in, but we're constantly working with a sort of a state consortium of clean energy organizations on what comes next. And part of what comes next then, my last little comment here, this coming legislative session for 2021, we're all hopeful that the state can work on the Iowa solar tax credits. They're essentially oversubscribed. So ideally, there needs to be an extra investment to pay down the wait list, which right now is a couple years long. But also the federal tax credits are phasing out, and nobody knows at this point if the federal tax credits will be continued. The Iowa tax credits are linked to the federal. So we'd rather not see the Iowa tax credits phase out, and the solution to that is decoupling. So the Iowa legislature this coming session hopefully will take a close look at decoupling, separating Iowa's tax credits from the federal. So even if the federal goes away, Iowa can continue. And then also ideally paying down that wait list so Iowans can get their Iowa solar tax credit right away in the year they build the system.
Larry, I'm realizing somehow we missed the solar screen, so I'm going to go back and you can talk about solar. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So the solar screen. So I'm Larry Germstead, and I've been on the Winneshiek Energy District Board for the 10 years, and have been enjoying making contributions every year to the Energy District. I just feel like it helps my wife and I be able to meet our goals of carbon neutrality, net zero living, being sustainable. So it's just really, we've really felt like this has been a big help to us to kind of set our map, set out our map to how to do the things we need to do. Well, we started a map for Winneshiek County that shows where all the solar, not all of them, but a lot of the solar installations are. But as you can see, 350 locally owned systems. You can see the other numbers there. So what I'm going to do is tell my story a little bit. And I brought along this little board to help me out so I can remember a few things. Our story is that we started building solar, did our first solar installation back in 2002. Again, for the purposes I mentioned earlier. And so back in 2002, we put in 2 kilowatt, and the panels were 120 watt panels. And when's the payback? Never. We just knew that when we did it. We'll probably never get a payback on that. We also, in 2004, put in a small wind turbine, a 10 kilowatt wind turbine. When's the payback on that? Never. But things are getting better. In 2006, we put in a 4 kilowatt system. Well, the payback was 56 years. Those are 200 watt panels. And then in 2012, we put in a 6 kilowatt system, and those are 240 watt panels, and the payback was 34 years. So we're getting better. Then in 2020, we put in another 4 kilowatt, and the payback on that, those are 385 watt panels. So we go from 120 watt panels back in 2002. 18 years later, we now have 400 watt panels, or what we put in is 385. Payback 9 years. So we use about 24,000 kilowatt hours every year on our farm and our house. We now make 24 to 25,000 kilowatt hours it's mainly with the solar. The wind turbine really only produces about 6,000 a year. So, all right, so in addition to that, we were trying to start a utility scale interest of a solar utility scale project in and around Decorah. So in 2012, set up the project, arrange the whole project with grants and tax credits, depreciation, the whole thing, feasibility studies, presented it to the utility. Utility didn't want it. We took it to Luther College, and Luther said, yeah, we'd love to do that. So we started a project with them. And then we did a second project in 2016. So the first project was 280 kilowatt, and that was the utility size scale at that time. Then the 820 was the utility scale solar project at that time. Those projects have worked out great. They have been duplicated by other nonprofits. So what we did is we kind of started the concept of using an investor who has the tax appetite to absorb and to do all the things that you could do as a property owner or as a business owner, but give it to the tax-free organizations like Luther College. So, how much time have I got? Did I use up?
If you want to take another 30 seconds and wrap up, that would be great.
Okay, so the other thing that we do is we do buy the Oneota tags each year because we have other properties and we just can't produce enough electricity on those other properties. But we have turned everything into electrical power. We have a place on a lake, we have a rental home, our farm, everything gets turned to electrical power, including the cars we drive. Haven't figured out how to do the tractor yet, but we'll get there next. So again, I really appreciate all the effort. Winneshiek Energy District is so well organized to carry out a lot of the things that we just need to do in a community. And I didn't realize what we were missing out on until Andy, Joel, and all you guys have pitched in and just solved a lot of our problems. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Larry. All right, Andy?
Okay. So I want to thank Larry too. Larry was involved in this from the beginning, as were some other of our current board members have been around for 10 years. So that is so important, that support. And I also want to thank Decorah Bank and Trust, because I think Kristen mentioned and Larry mentioned that they have been very strong supporters, both of the district as an organization, but also in leading by example. Decorah Bank has been lowering their carbon footprint steadily by investing in efficiency and renewables as we go. And that is a brief lead into one of the questions then also I see on chat, which I'll just address in part as we go and we can talk more about. But one person asked, what action would be something that other communities like Decorah should adopt? And leadership by example is really important. So communities themselves, cities, for example, small cities, big cities, can invest in energy efficiency, can look at all their opportunities and do some analysis on all their buildings and all their energy usage, and invest in energy efficiency and invest in solar, and that benefits every single resident and local taxpayer. And so that's a great place to start. And then of course, Leslie Sand also mentioned on here, work on a sustainability plan, develop a sustainability committee, look at carbon pricing. Other local policies include building codes. Those are very important. So there are a whole lot of things that local governments can do. And energy districts everywhere have really worked hard with local governments. So coming to this slide here of the model, most energy districts at this point, all energy districts, are nonprofits organized at the county level. The goal is, of course, to lead and accelerate that locally owned clean energy transition. So we do that through a lot of the strategies, a lot of what's being talked about right here, everything from technical assistance, energy auditing that works with homes, farms, businesses, local governments, institutions, all the way up through working on policy at the state level. Anything that can help communities, counties, and all of our individual energy users go clean and green and save money and become wealthier and better stewards of the planet, the better. Since we started in 2010, at about 2015, our neighbors started to look at this model and say, hey, let's do that too. So Clayton and Howard County were the first two expansion energy districts. Dubuque was the next. And since then, we're now at 9. Actually, Polk County is in its incorporation process, so that makes 10 energy districts in Iowa. There are 2 actually in Wisconsin as well. So the model seems to have some legs. And we're really excited about that. We're working hard on some policy options as well, because if you can imagine energy districts going through every county in Iowa, you know, financial sustainability is a question mark for nonprofits, just like it is for new startup small businesses. Nonprofits are in a way, just like a small business, you need a revenue stream to do the work you want to do. And we probably can't have endless numbers of energy districts all sort of competing for the same small grants. There are membership opportunities everywhere, but still we need to probably develop some policy partnerships that would allow, that would put some potential state existing, not new, but existing state funds, things like energy efficiency funds channeled through energy districts would be a great match. So we're working on that. We have an association called the Clean Energy Districts of Iowa, and we're working on a lot of those issues on how to grow the movement. So stay tuned.
All right. So in the last 10 years, we've really relied on our community, as you've heard through all these stories, relied on and been involved with our community. And so we do that directly with individuals through services in their homes and on their farms and at their businesses. And then we also just get to interact with the wider community. So one way that we do that is the energy breakfasts, which are now energy lunches, which you all know about because you're all here. But what I love about the energy breakfast story is that the energy breakfasts were really the first program, the first thing that the energy district was doing. So the energy district started with just a group of people gathering at T-Box for a monthly chat about energy. And it started at a big round table in the front window, and then too many people wanted to come, and so they moved to the back room, and then too many people wanted to come, and so they moved to the basement. And now we're online. So we just keep adapting and welcoming more people. We've also done a lot of programming outside of T-Box. We do solar fairs and tours and electric vehicle fests. The Green Iowa team outreaches to hundreds of kids over their 10 years through programming at the library and with Parks and Rec and all sorts of places. And the story that I wanted to share today was about the Electric Vehicle Fest. So normally Festival is at the county fairgrounds, and it's a big to-do, and everybody brings their car, and people come to the fairgrounds and they get to see every car at once and ask every person every question. But we decided that this year, because gathering wasn't a great idea, and so instead we took the EV Fest and we put it at the farmers market. And we had one car, except for our last week, we had 2 cars, come each week. And then farmers market goers and people who came to the farmers market specifically to see the electric vehicles could come and ask the drivers questions. And I got to be the staff person at about half of those. And it was just really wonderful to be out with a big range of people, some people who cared nothing about the electric vehicles, some people who only cared about the Teslas, and some people who came back every single week because they wanted to see every single car. And it was just a really great experience to be out in the community and talking to people and hearing their questions and hearing the excitement about electric vehicles and feeling like there's some momentum there and it's just going to keep growing. So. This one's you, Andy. Our last slide.
Just our last slide then?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Well, this doesn't need to take a lot of time, but the point here is obviously that energy districts work on partnerships every day. We work with so many different groups and organizations and institutions, and this is just a sampling, mostly of local partners. You can see in here rural electric co-ops. We work quite a bit with rural electric co-ops on reaching out, especially to, for example, low to moderate income households, but also on issues like net metering and community solar. We've worked quite a bit. We've already talked about Decorah Bank. We've worked a lot with Luther College directly on various projects of theirs, as well as on policy. For example, we mentioned the rate cases under the policy conversation. Our most recent Alliant rate case involvement was not as Wintersheik Energy District. It was as a part of a group called Decorah Area Group. Very creative name. But that was actually a formal organization, a formal alliance between the Energy District and Luther College and the Community College and the Med Center and the City of Decorah. We were all, and Ossie Haugen. Actually, that wasn't the community college, it was Ossie Haugen Senior Services. So we were all part of a group that developed testimony together with excellent legal support and submitted this testimony into the rate case. So there again, the Energy District actually rarely does anything alone beyond the technical energy auditing types of work and the boots on the ground. The city of Decorah, of course, we worked a great deal with. The municipalization effort that Martin discussed was a partnership with many different groups. I want to mention for sure Upper Explorerland and the Northeast Iowa Community Action Corporation. Of course, the Community Action Agency runs the weatherization program and the LIHEAP program, critically important programs that have been around for a long time, long before we came on the scene, generally geared towards lower income households, so income eligible households. We work hard to, with our AmeriCorps team, to coach folks into those programs, send them over to Community Action for the programs that they're eligible for as much as possible, and to do cooperative outreach to that population. With Upper Explorerland, they run the Northeast Iowa Regional Housing Trust Fund, which is another source of some potential economic assistance for qualifying households. And so our team, actually our AmeriCorps team, is an important partner with the trust fund to provide those basic first step energy efficiency services to many of those households. So we could talk all day long about the partnerships, but we have amazing and great, wonderful local partners, and every energy district essentially is going to be working this way. So thanks again to everyone. Heidi.
All right. Well, thank you all for sharing your stories. I just want to share one more screen. This is a celebration of our 10th anniversary. We're really glad you could join us. But as Andy alluded to, this work takes money, and we're currently in the middle of our membership drive. So it's our 10th anniversary membership drive. We're really excited to be sharing stories this way and on our social media campaign and in our newsletter. So if you're not signed up for our newsletter, and if you don't like us on Facebook and Instagram, go ahead and do that to get some really great stories from other members of the community. And then if you are considering renewing or joining, we would love to have you do that. You can do it easily online. We're also sending out a way to do it through the mail. You can always drop off a check, but we'd love to have you join us and continue to work with us. So we'll open it up to questions. We've got some questions in the chat, I see. Currently lost the chat. Let's see. Did anyone else want to speak to one action that could be something that other communities the same size as Decorah could start with? Leslie, did you want to talk about any of the things you wrote in the chat? We're happy to hear from all voices.
Okay, yeah, I could. I'm going to try and start our video here in just a minute. So yes, I was involved minimally in the development of the Decorah Sustainability Plan. I think because I was asked to get in on the Water and Air subcommittee. I think probably because of, well, who knows, maybe it was because we've been supporters of the energy district, but anyway, so I had some minimal involvement. I say minimal because I don't feel like I contributed a lot, but I learned a lot. Anyway, and then they adopted that plan in December, January this last year. Before it was actually adopted, our Citizens Climate Lobby chapter talked about asking the City Council to endorse a carbon pricing plan, more specifically HR 763, which CCL supports. But we decided to wait until after the sustainability plan had been adopted, because we felt that was very important, and we didn't want to, rock the boat before that was done. So after they adopted it formally, then we went and formed kind of a lobby team and went to the City Council, and they voted on it eventually. And what they did was not endorse the specific bill, but they endorsed carbon pricing in general, which is great. So I can go into more detail, but I won't unless anybody has more questions.
Thanks, Leslie.
I'll touch on a quick question here from Harry. He was asking about gravity, using gravity for energy, and I think was referring to pumped hydro. So there are a lot of interesting ideas out there, and to be part of the clean energy transition. Storage is one of them, of course. As the more renewables we put on the grid, most renewable production is real time and is used real time. And how do we store that, for when the sun isn't shining or the wind is blowing less? Well, a part of that answer, of course, is when you have a big grid, when all the distribution grids are connected to the big transmission grid, renewables actually balance really well. So if your transmission grid is connected across a major part of the country, like the Midwest grid is, generally speaking, the wind is always blowing somewhere. The sun isn't always shining somewhere, but the wind is always blowing somewhere. So actually a big interconnected grid is a big part of the solution. We don't have to store most of the energy we use, but we will have to store some. Batteries are a big part of that. We're working on that. We've talked about that. And part of the answer to Harry's question is actually the biggest component right now of energy storage in the world, I'm pretty sure about this, is actually just pumped hydro. So when there's surplus electricity that's not getting used on the grid, the markets go way down. So the value of that electricity is really low. So then what some of the big utilities will do, and some private players, is they'll just use that to pump water uphill to a reservoir somewhere. And then they've got their hydro generators so that when they need the power, they let it flow back downhill. So pumped hydro is just another form of energy storage. You're just using the physics of a mass at higher altitude has more energy theoretically and at higher elevation than a mass at lower elevation. So, well, Northeast Iowa especially is pretty hilly. Could we do that here? Who knows? We'll see. It's one of the things people are thinking about quite a bit. Craig, go ahead.
Well, a couple comments about that. One is when I was there, I did a little back of the envelope study and located, looking at a topo map, 5 or 6 locations around the Decorah area where there were potential areas you could develop a lake on top of a hilltop within a short distance of the river that would give you 150 to 200 foot drop. And so I think there's potential for stored hydro around the Decorah area. It would take an engineer and probably a big investment in lake building, but in Germany, I took students to Germany and Norway and Sweden on sustainability tours. We saw a big project on the Elbe River where there were 10-foot pipes where they pumped water from the river up to this lake and then let it run back down. And it's about 80% efficient. And actually now Germany they put a cable under the North Sea. They're exporting electricity to Norway when they have excess wind, which happens quite a bit because they overbuilt their wind. And they use it to pump water up into the Norwegian hydro lakes. Norway, as you probably know, is 99% hydroelectricity. So they've got a lot of lakes, and then they just let it run back down and generate the power again. So it really is a feasible, but you need that change in elevation to make it work. It doesn't work in most of the rest of the Midwest. So,
right.
And if you like, I could say a word about the first meetings, Andy, when we started this thing. Did anybody talk about that?
Go for it. Not much. Yeah.
So 10 years ago, Andy and his father, Paul, got a small group of us, half a dozen of us together in a room at Luther College. Jim Martin Schramm, I believe, was part of that. And we talked for several meetings about this idea of soil and water conservation district model that could be used to work on energy issues, and decided it was something we wanted to do. And we became the core of the board for the first Winneshiek Energy District. Ended up with an office in a small house in Decorah for a while. And Andy wrote a grant for stimulus money from the feds, which we may have opportunities to do again with the Biden administration, to get significant federal money. And we used it to basically subsidize the direct installs in individuals' homes and built a relationship with Green Hour AmeriCorps. So it all started in just a few meetings with with Andy and his dad, talking about how to make this happen, and here we are.
Craig was there from the beginning and then left us for Johnson County and then started an energy district in Johnson County. So thank you,
Right.
Craig.
Well, and we've got one going in Lynn County as well, and Polk is not far behind. So
Right.
each time Andy and Jolene came down, and we did a little dog and pony show to explain to folks what was possible, and local groups are just really loving the idea, and here it's just growing all over the state and now in Wisconsin. So
Yeah, these champions are everywhere, and it's kind of a model for creating an institution where people can get to work, try to get to work. And you mentioned Polk County, and since Kevin and Leslie are here, but I just want to mention too, the SAND support with family down in Des Moines. I remember Kevin coming into the office, a couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, saying, you really need to work in Polk. And I said, get to work in Polk, go right ahead. and join our board in the process. And he just kind of walked out thinking about that. I wasn't so sure he was gonna, but then he came right back and got to work. And Kevin really kicked off a lot of the contacts and connections to get things rolling in Polk, and now they have an energy district. So yeah, that's how these things are working. It's really gratifying. Harry's on here. Wave, Harry, so people can see you. Harry was a key force behind the second energy district beyond Winneshiek in Clayton County. Was chair of their group from day one. So thank you, Harry. Yep, so many great people. Yep. Well, other questions? Thank you also, since we're doing thank yous and people don't have questions, to our AmeriCorps members here. We do have Mara and Matthew and Martin and Colin. Hi, Colin. 4 of our 5.
Maggie's here too.
Maggie's here. Great. Are on. So, hey, this is our 2020 to 2021 AmeriCorps team. Say hi, everybody. Yep. It was really fun putting together a publication with a number of our 10-year impacts recently, because part of what we have to do, then you go through the exercise of listing all the people who have been involved. And of course, our AmeriCorps list is this long. 10 years of AmeriCorps members, and every one of them, just a wonderful team. So thanks for being here, everyone. You all want to say anything? Martin already spoke. Go for it.
Yeah, it's just been a great experience so far. I started over the summer months and got to transition into this year with the last year's team. And part of the way I got involved is I ran cross country at Luther, and a number of cross country alums from Luther have stuck around Decorah for an extra year to work with the Winneshiek Energy District as an AmeriCorps member. So yeah, I'm glad to be here now. I've heard great things and I've had a good experience so far. And this group seems to draw together really neat people who care about this place, care about Northeast Iowa, and care about the environment. And those are a lot of things I'm passionate about as well.
Yep.
That feels like an excellent sentiment to end on.
There you go. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for this virtual celebration of our first 10 years. And we look forward to working with you all for the next 10 years and beyond.
Great. Thanks, Heidi.
Thanks to everybody who's made this happen. It's really exciting. We're building a movement across the whole state and around the Midwest. So let's go.
Yep. Yep. Thank you, Craig. All right. Bye, everyone. On.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.